Today on Let It Rip Weekend, reparations being debated on Capitol Hill. Some call it righting a wrong. Others say it's political exploitation. Our panel weighs in. Plus, immigration, Iran, and inconsistency. Are the president's actions helping or hurting? Let It Rip Weekend starts right now. Hey, good morning. It is time for Let It Rip. I'm Charlie Langton. All right, let's get right to our panel. First off, a conservative radio show, The Edwards Notebook. He is syndicated in over 200 markets across the country. Ron Edwards is here. And next to him, he is the son of immigrant parents, now in his second term in the State House, representing his hometown of Dearborn. Abdullah Hamid is here. Also, a man who calls it like he sees it, Monday through Friday, 3 to 6, WAAM, Talk 1600. That is, if you're a conservative, of course. Welcome back, Tyrone X. And finally, she is the civil rights attorney. She just won a major victory in the Supreme Court for thousands who were wrongfully accused of unemployment fraud by the state of Michigan. Attorney Jennifer Lord is back. But Ron Edwards, let's start with reparations, a big topic in the Congress. It is also a big topic now from Democrats, and many whom are running for president. But let's take a look first of all. Senator Cory Booker, he was testifying in favor of reparations. Let's listen to this.
We as a nation have not yet truly acknowledged and grappled with racism and white supremacy that has tainted this country's founding and continues to persist in those deep racial disparities and inequalities today. So, Ron Edwards, let's start with you. The issue for Congress really is to study reparations. You would agree with that, wouldn't you?
Well, the meaning of reparations means to you pay the victims of a particular situation, such as slavery. Now, the last time I checked, slaves in America have been dead for quite a long period of time, and when you know, no one here is a victim of slavery. I'm sorry, unless you, of course, add into account the mental slavery of our indoctrination centers called schools that have not prepared people over the years for success in our country, and that maybe we should have reparations for that. But as far as for slavery, I'm sorry, they're not here, and this is just a waste of time. Let
me bring in the representative right now. I want you to respond to this. This is a columnist, Coleman Hughes. He also testified at that same Senate hearing.
Black people don't need another apology. We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. We need a less punitive criminal justice system. We need affordable health care. And none of these things can be achieved through reparations for slavery. Nearly everyone close to me.
All right, he goes on to say that, but let me ask the representative, so will reparations cause the country to be maybe further split on race?
Reparations is an opportunity to deliver justice, not only for centuries of slavery, but also for the apartheid state that America was post-slavery. After the emancipation, we had segregation. You had a separate class of laws for African Americans than you did for white folk. So reparations is certainly needed. In addition to, after reparations being delivered, we still need to address the systematic oppression that is built in within the system. We talk about black schools being shut down, not white schools. We talk about redlining against black communities, not white communities. So certainly slavery is just the beginning, but there are symptoms till today because of slavery that was.
So, Tyrone X, I think the representative is making the point that slavery exists today, but in a different form. Would you agree with that?
No. And let's back up. If we're going to do anything with regard to the unjust laws in America, that was all Democrats putting that in place. Democrats brought about slavery. They maintained it. They brought about Jim Crow. They were everything from Lester Maddox all the way up through George Wallace, Bull Connor. Let's look at reparations for what they really are. It's race-baiting pimp stuff. It's trying to stir something up around nothing. It's giving people free money. And how does it ever work out when you give somebody something for free? Did your grandma ever tell you to get out there and earn it like that?
That's just absolutely horrifying to hear that you're talking about race baiting and that it's given away.
Because that's what it is.
African American community that built this country on their backs through slavery. What do you mean?
Wait one second.
We're speaking from a position of privilege.
Lord here. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Racism is baked into our system. If your great-great-grandparent was a slave, they lost opportunity, they lost a chance for education, and that feeds, it goes through the generations. It exists today, and what is, excuse me, wait a second, excuse me,
you are speaking from a position of privilege as a white man.
Is the lack of education and the lack of opportunity, and that is what a true reparations-based plan could do.
No, you need a free market-based plan.
That is a free market-based plan.
Giving someone something about
a chance
giving something to somebody about something that no longer exists.
They didn't
Life
have
isn't fair.
Education. It's not
Why not?
fair.
Okay, then
it wasn't. It's not fair
let's
because
go all
they
the
never
way.
had an opportunity.
Well, let's go all the way. Wait a minute. Let's go all the way and give reparations to the 27 million black Africans who are enslaved today. Okay, you want to go all the way? You want to take this to the extreme? At least they are current slaves.
This is not an all or nothing situation.
Oh, yes, it is.
Just because we can't fix every problem doesn't mean we can't fix the one looking at us in the eye.
Do you sincerely want to fix the problem of what you're talking about? Why don't you support things like free market economics and teaching people?
This is free market economics.
And teaching people how to operate in a free market economy. You know what?
The free market doesn't exist.
Because of
down economics is not.
That's the lie.
Because of the philosophy. Wait a minute. Because of the philosophy of the Democrat Party, do you know that in the 1960s, blacks, 40% of blacks owned their own businesses? Today, because of them following the back end of the golden donkey, only 3% of black Americans today own businesses.
And
then you want to talk about, instead of encouraging more economic activity, all right, you want to say, well, here's a little handout for you to feel good about racism. I don't care. You know what? As a black American.
All right, hold on, Ron, hold on. We also talked to Judge Greg Mathis. He was in town because there's a big convention going on right now. He was the keynote speaker in Detroit at the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations. Here's what the judge said.
African Americans as slaves and as African Americans modern times during segregation were taught and convinced that they were second-class citizens. And so when you feel that way and that type of mindset is passed down from generation to generation.
Ronex, why don't you address what the judge just said, though? Second-class citizens, many black Americans feel that way.
Well, they feel that way. You're right. It's emotional, and it is something that is festering because the flame is fanned by people who want to keep the racist thing going. Look, if you're in this country, thank you, God, because this is the best country in the history of mankind. With all of its flaws, it still has the most opportunities for everybody, black or white or whatever. Giving somebody money for something from the past is nothing more than rewarding them to do nothing, which festers laying around on the couch and watching TV and eating pizza.
But I understand that it's not giving them money necessarily, as you seem to say. Reparations can take other directives. They can build schools. They can provide other things, loans,
go out and earn
all
it.
those
Start
kind of things.
their own damn schools. It has nothing to do with
you know what?
Stuff.
We need a little history lesson here. You know, right after slavery, and this is one of the main reasons why they bumped Lincoln off, Lincoln had signed a bill to give blacks a large amount of land in the Carolinas back 30 miles from the coastline. And guess what happened? When they murdered him, then the Democrats immediately scrapped that. And so they always talk about the 40 acres and a mule. That's hogwash in comparison to what Lincoln really wanted to give blacks. And so today, rather than, as I said before, it's it's just so simple.
This has nothing to do with partisan politics. I don't know why Democrats, whoever was wrong,
because you Democrats support victimology.
Whoever supported
you Democrats like to see blacks as victims.
Was wrong.
You Democrats.
It's not about victimization.
That's what you all do.
Right.
You all specialize in victimology.
Hold on. Let me just get one real quick. Mitch McConnell, this is a quote that's been talked about a lot this week. Here's Senator Mitch McConnell on reparations.
I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago for whom none of us currently living are responsible is a good idea.
We grant that Mr.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
The responsibility and where the problem started isn't the issue here. It's how do we provide opportunity for people who are still feeling the ramifications of what happened 200 years ago.
Handouts are an
and wait a second, excuse me.
But is it a handout, though?
It's not a handout. No one's talking about giving someone a $1,000 check. But let's get someone the same opportunity to go get an internship working for Quicken Loans. That most African Americans and most poor people can't afford an unpaid internship. And so what we need to do is think of reparations in terms of education and opportunity.
Just real quick.
Yep.
We don't also talk about the wealth that was generated by white plantation owners due to slavery. And that the majority of wealth in this country is actually inherited, it is not earned. Right? So if you want to talk about this idea that this is a handout, if you speak to the wealth that is inherited and passed down generation after generation due to things such as slavery, we need to talk about reparations, and not from a point of victimology, but from a point of justice.
All right, hold that thought. Don't forget, share your thoughts with us using the hashtag #LetItRip on Facebook and Twitter. You may very well see your comments on the air at the end of the show. After the break, the president says he is not backing down from the conflict in Iran and immigration reform, but critics say otherwise. We'll find out what our panel thinks. That is coming up. Welcome back to Let It Rip. A plan to conduct immigration raids in cities across the country. It was going to be held today, but now on hold, as the president tweeted yesterday. Here's what he tweeted. I have delayed the illegal immigration removal process for 2 weeks to see if the Democrats and Republicans can get together and work out a solution to the asylum and loophole problems at the southern border. If not, deportations start. Representative Abdullah Ahmad, this sounds like President Trump is conceding, actually doing what Nancy Pelosi wanted him to do. Isn't this a good thing to try to work together?
So that's a lot in that question I'd like to unpack. First of all, I never take what Trump is doing as good. So I'm smart enough to do that. Secondly, the idea of tying that the majority of folks are undocumented because of our southern border is also a false reality. The majority of those are undocumented overstayed visas. There actually is no crisis at the southern border. That's something that he has just manufactured, as well as his administration.
There are not a lot of illegals coming across the border in the South?
It is actually a falsified emergency that has been created by the Trump administration, more than anything to just perpetuate this otherness of brown communities. Is
he just playing to his base? Is that what you're saying?
Wholeheartedly.
Theron, do you agree with that?
This gentleman just said that no matter what Trump does, no matter what, he dismisses it out of hand. That is absurd.
I don't know how
you must take everybody on a case-by-case basis, even you. Now, at the border, coming across the border, child trafficking, fentanyl, it's wide open. They're finding dead bodies down there. They literally have gunfire coming across the border. They just hit somebody in El Paso jogging. That's a fact. Now, the thing on the border is no country will ever survive without secure borders. It's like a cell. It has a cell membrane. We are a country. We need a border. And right now, the Democrats want it wide open because they can't win.
The Republicans have been in control in the entirety of the legislature and Congress, and we do have secure borders. Again, this idea, this manufactured idea that our borders are not secure.
Really?
They're not.
It's just a falsified lie.
Our borders are not secure.
It is just a lie.
Ron, isn't a deal on immigration, as the president seems to be hinting, better than massive amounts of deportation? We need some stability.
You guys, you're a student of history, Charlie, I believe. Do you remember Operation Wetback under Truman? We need mass deportation of illegal border crossers in our nation. There is a crisis. People that say that isn't, either they are lying on purpose or they just don't understand reality. Any nation, no nation, can remain great or strong if you allow your borders to be open. Now, I understand that there's a lot of people in our nation that want our nation to be changed. And by flooding our country with many people from different lands who do not come here, by the way, with the intention of assimilating and becoming Americans. And if you don't come here with the intention of becoming American, we don't need you.
But the issue, let me get Jennifer, though, from a political point of view, though, do you think the president is trying to play maybe some politics, trying to get some middle-of-the-road voters by at least asking the Democrats for a deal?
Well, let's start with the premise that this is a manufactured crisis, and I think that he is a master at diverting attention, and he is talking about how he wants to work with the Democrats, but he never seems to make that happen because that is not his goal. His goal is to gin up his base who wants this wall. That's what he ran on.
We need the wall.
It's not going to happen. In 2 weeks, he may deport 100 million people or all of the immigrants, and he could do it tomorrow. This could be just another distraction tactic because that's what he's a master at.
Let's do another thing. Iran shoots down a U.S. drone. The president abruptly stops an airstrike on Iran, he says, for humanity reasons, human reasons, because of the likely death of 150 or so people. Let me get, do you think, Theron, that a strike against Iran was needed?
In 2005, I was on the radio when George Bush announced at that time that satellite imagery showed Iran, and they showed the actual bases, where they had moved things underground. And that the speculation was they were working on centrifuging uranium. And I said at that time, we need to take those out. Just straight up take them out with bunker busters. They didn't do anything. In 84, it was 84, 83, it was the Iranians through Hezbollah that wasted all of our Marines in Beirut.
What should the president do?
What I'm getting at is I don't think we should go in and just hit 138 people on a military base. We should completely take out their ability to fly airplanes and radar in that country in a nanosecond.
Well, you may agree with that.
I mean, no, absolutely not. I don't think we need to be Iraq 2.0 by trying to go after and hit Iran and start a war with a nation that...
We're already at war with Iran.
You know, first of all, Trump backed out of the Iran agreement. That is something he should never have done.
It should have never been put together in the first place.
The international community is all in agreement.
They were all wrong, too. They were all wrong.
And so I think more than anything, we need to seek peaceful efforts as opposed to sending our nation back into a war with a country.
What would you do if you're the president when a major aircraft gets shot down and there's a dispute as to whether or not
what would he do? He'd make sure
you are absolutely racist, man. You beat the drums of white nationalism over and over again.
No.
Tell me that I try to enact Sharia law.
You want to talk about racism?
You are absolutely racist and bigoted.
I'll tell you.
Hold on. All right, go ahead, Ron.
No, see, Charlie, the rumor has it that Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell went out and talked about what the president was going to do, and Iran kind of moved because those particular armaments are mobile, and they were moved around, and they put our soldiers in danger, and that is... Rumor has it that's the real reason why the president drew back, because you know, when people run their mouths, and whether they're Republicans or not, and put our soldiers in danger when they were going to go in.
So what should the president do?
The president needs to continue to put these sanctions on Iran, and
not a military strike then.
Not at this time, because it was blown. The cover was blown.
Absolutely. The last thing that we need is another war right now. I think it's refreshing that President Trump didn't listen to John Bolton for one hot minute, and we need to not inject ourselves into global conflict yet again.
We only have a couple minutes.
We don't have to put one boot on the ground, by the way. It can all be handled through drones and missiles.
Absolutely.
We don't have to put people on the ground anymore.
So you still have civilian casualties.
No, I'm not for a war. I'm for crippling Iran, 100%.
How do you do that how do you do that without killing people?
You're going to kill some people on military bases, but those people have been killing us.
Even the president said he didn't want to do that.
They've been killing us for decades.
How has Iran been...
Iran declared war against America in 1979, and they've been acting on it ever since.
Iran and Iraq.
You know,
you don't go to war because there is
war has already been happening.
War has not been.
War has already been happening.
In the Middle East.
You mean to tell me terrorist activity is not war?
Way too many times in the Middle East.
They just have a different way of doing
let them
war.
Fight their problems
America
on
has
their
been
own.
trying to ship its version of democracy to every single country across the world. At some point, we need to check ourselves. We as a nation have been at war for the last 200 years.
Well, you know what? We want to be ourselves, and if other people would leave us alone, we need to build our own walls.
Because, is that because
Just like Hungary, Poland,
Iran did not move
Israel. Wait a minute.
The drone. The drone was near Iran. I mean, let's clarify.
But it was in international waters. It was in international waters.
Seek the United Nations as
and by the way, nothing about the tankers that were hit. How about that, pal?
Okay, I don't think we're going to solve this problem right now, and we do have to take a break. But coming up, we want to hear what you are thinking, your thoughts, live on the air when we come back. All right, now it is time for you to be part of the discussion. Sean writes, this is only brought up, reparations, as political fodder. It would be virtually impossible to institute this. And Stephen says, how do I sign up for reparations? Let me give that to Representative Ahmoud. How do you address those?
Yeah, I don't think whatsoever this political fodder. I think this is about delivering justice, and it's an opportunity to actually create this commission to find a means of doing so.
All right, Joyce says the attorney is correct. People are still feeling and experiencing the ramifications of it, meaning, well, a monetary value cannot be awarded. It has to do in policy changes and laws. We're talking about discrimination. Tyrone X.
Well, we need to stop dealing with what people feel. We need to deal with what the reality of the situation is, and you should never reward bad behavior, as in people screaming for giving people free money. That's very bad behavior.
Calvin writes, slavery is a part of American history, like it or not. There's nothing that American can do to repay those who have suffered or lost their lives because of reparations. They can't repair history. Jennifer, take that one.
It's absolutely true that there's nothing that will ever fully compensate the victims of slavery. But what we can do is we can come up with a plan by working together to find opportunities, to find education, to help an entire community have the same opportunities as people who were not descendants of slaves.
All right, let me get Kelly. Reparations would cost the country trillions of dollars. It would be hard to truly know who deserves them. Slavery's over. Let's move on. Representative, move on?
It's hard to move on without delivering justice. How do you move on when the systematic oppression is baked into the system even till today? So reparations, I believe, is only the beginning.
All right, we could go on for a long time, but unfortunately we are out of time. There will be a Democratic debate this week, the first of many. Maybe that will make its way into a future Let It Rip Weekend topic. That is it for this edition of Let It Rip Weekend. Remember, head over to Fox2Detroit.com for all the news of the day.